Good morning. Welcome to our virtual program for today called Clarifying a Business Idea Using the Lean Canvas. I'm your presenter. My name is Hadiza Saadu, and I am the small business specialist at the Kansas City Public Library. On this screen, you can see my email address as well as a link to schedule a one-on-one meeting with me. So if you're watching this, please feel free to reach out with any feedback, any questions, and also feel free to schedule a one-on-one if you are seeking one-on-one assistance. All right. Our learning objectives for today are pretty simple, and I'll just read them off this slide here. Our first objective for today is to understand the purpose and the components of the Lean Canvas. Our second objective is to gain some familiarity with something called the Lean methodology, which informs the Lean Canvas and versions of the Lean Canvas that came before it. And then last, but definitely not least, with this program, the aim is for people to be able to identify which tool to access the Lean Canvas from within the digital catalog. All right, so let's dive right in. What is the Lean Canvas? So the Lean Canvas was adapted from something called the Business Model Canvas, which is a tool that is often used in high growth startup environments that often have to do with technology. So think Silicon Valley. It's a tool that helps entrepreneurs focus on the key elements of running a business. The business model canvas was first popularized in a book called The Lean Startup, which uses the lean methodology that I mentioned in our learning objectives in the last slide. Um, and this lean methodology is something that intentionally emphasizes a business's value that it can create for customers. So just think of the lean methodology before we get into that. Think of the lean methodology as kind of a way to orient your thinking towards your ideation process if you are thinking about starting a business for a product or a service. Um, as far as what the Lean Canvas can do for you, it helps entrepreneurs describe their business in a one-page summary. So if you're an entrepreneur and you're seeking support, being able to have your business described in a succinct manner can come to your advantage if you happen to meet somebody who expresses interest in anything that has to do with your idea and you want to um, get their interest to potentially talk more later. Being able to describe your business succinctly is very important, and the Lean Canvas can help with that through the one-page summary. And last but definitely not least, this is very important. The Lean Canvas helps entrepreneurs assess the strength or validity of a new business idea before making major investments in time and or money. All right. So how does the lean canvas actually work? What we're looking at here on this screen is a version of the lean canvas that matches what we're going to look at as an example later. This you can find through a Google search. You can download the PDFs. There's a lot of different websites that have um, this view of the lean canvas for use. So please feel free to explore on your own. On this page, I want to just, I'm not going to cover what each of the different sections of the canvas are. That's what we're going to do in the example. What I'm actually going to do here is just kind of talk through the order of operations that is intended with the lean canvas. So as you can see, it's not exactly clear necessarily where you would start, but intuitively, most people are probably going to start with the problem. And with a problem comes a solution. So if you're just looking at this particular version of the lean canvas, you might think that you'll start with the problem and then go to the solution. That is not the case. What you're starting with is the problem. from the vantage point of the customer. Then you're going to go all the way over to the right hand side and start to articulate the customer segments. Then, after the customer segments, you'll go to the unique value proposition. After the unique value proposition, then you're ready to tackle the solutions. So I'll just kind of cover that again because it's not intuitive and it's not necessarily something that you're going to guess if this is the first time you've ever seen this. So, first and foremost, you are putting yourself in the shoes of a potential customer. You are articulating whatever problem it is that the customer has in the problem section of the canvas. Then you're going over to the right-hand side and you are identifying at least one customer segment. You can start with one. And if you're thinking about this again with using an example of maybe even the ideal customer that you have in mind for your business idea, you can articulate what that customer segment is about, and leave it at that, knowing that there will be multiple segments that you could potentially address, and you'll come to that later. So again, after customer segments, you go to unique value proposition. And here you're articulating the unique value proposition to each customer segment. What is the value that each particular customer is getting from your idea, from your solution? So as you can see, as I'm talking through this, you can start to see what the logic is behind the canvas itself. So from the unique value proposition, you've articulated what the value is. Then you're actually going to describe what that solution is in the solution section here. So by the time you've gotten to the solution section, you have already thought through what is the problem, what is the main customer segment, and maybe some secondary ones, what is the value, and then you are very well poised to describe what your solution is to the problem that you've articulated in the first section here. So after solution, then you'll go back to the right-hand side and you'll start to articulate the different channels. So what are channels? Think of channels as any means by which a potential customer or an existing customer finds out about your product or service. So this can be anything from the point of sale to any mode of advertising through word of mouth. So just think of all of the different ways that a potential customer or an existing customer is going to hear the name of your business and know about the work that you do as a business. That's channels. After channels, then we're going to the bottom two sections here. We're going to start with revenue streams. Revenue streams, I think, comes before cost structure because it's a bit more intuitive. If you have a business idea, you're probably already thinking about the ways in which you can make money off of that idea. So it's probably more top of mind to articulate what are the potential revenue streams from the idea that you have versus the cost. But once you have that articulated, or at least the beginnings of the different revenue streams articulated, then you can start to think about the corresponding cost. Obviously, every business operates on some kind of cost, whether, there's cost in manufacturing a product, cost in assembling a service, all kinds of costs go into starting a business and operating a business. So the cost structure is probably going to take a bit more time, and you'll probably need to do some research if there are unknown numbers as far as what's going to go in to getting your business off the ground. Then, after cost, we'll go to key metrics. And so maybe you can start to guess um, why key metrics comes after revenue and cost structure. If you are not 100% certain about the exact metrics that you want to collect for your business, the first thing that you can think of is profit. If you are trying to make a profit through your business, the first metric that you're going to look at is the difference between your revenue and your cost. Um, There are other metrics that you might want to be looking at as well. It might be number of customers, it might be how long a customer engages with your service. It just depends on what the business is itself. So after key metrics, we have one more box, and that's unfair advantage. This is the last segment because this is the one that focuses the least on the customer and the most on you as the entrepreneur. So when I work with people one on one on the Lean Canvas, I like to describe unfair advantage as um, just how to think through it is to think about what is it about you as the entrepreneur, as the person with the idea, as the person with the execution. What is it about you and your skills, your network, your resources that you have access to that makes you stand out from other entrepreneurs who are competing in the same space as you? So, what makes you unique? What makes you singular? What is something that no other business can actually replicate? Um, and if you can't necessarily think of something when you start this is intended to help you start to think in that direction. Um, because at the end of the day, what the Lean Canvas does is as our title of today's program says, it helps you clarify an idea. So if there are things that are missing, no fret. This is a living document. This is something that you will develop as you go and as you continue to collect information and do research. All right, get to our next slide. So we've got a little bit more to go before we get into our example. I want to talk a little bit about the lean methodology, just because it's something that, you know, your typical small business owner is not necessarily thinking of in those terms, but I think is useful for any entrepreneur. So I talked a little bit about the context of the business model canvas, which is the version of the lean canvas that came before it. So we've got the business model canvas and then we've got the lean canvas. We're focused on the lean canvas today. So the lean methodology, the context that it's typically been used in, again, it's the same context as the business model canvas, often used in high growth startup contexts where there are opportunities to attract investors. So we're thinking things like Silicon Valley. But if you're not super familiar with things that come out of Silicon Valley, maybe you're more familiar with the show Shark Tank, or just the idea of pitching, or maybe locally you've been to 1 Million Cups, where you've seen people do short pitches to get support from um, organizations and people with resources in the audience. Essentially, this this methodology grew in a context where entrepreneurs are buying for the attention of angel investors and other forms of early stage support into a high growth potential business, um, usually a corporation. The lean methodology itself, it encourages entrepreneurs to embrace a mindset of ongoing experimentation. And so this is, I think is the piece that can be taken outside of the corporation structure of a for-profit business and can be applied to the smaller types of businesses that might be an LLC, right? So, and I say this in terms of the ideation phase. Um, Being able to learn as you go, and apply the things that you've learned to what you have done in the past to analyze and then create something better than what you have had in the past is a path towards potential success. And at least it's a path towards really being able to engage authentically with a potential customer base. And I think that is something that is useful for any type of business owner, especially a small business owner. So getting back into what is the lean methodology, and I'm kind of speaking around what is the lean methodology itself because we're not super concerned with the ins and outs of a high growth life. But just know that the lean methodology has popularized entrepreneurial jargon like MVP, pivot, and iteration. These words and other jargon unify the world of entrepreneurs and that are attracting investors and other kinds of stakeholders. So they're all speaking a similar language. And if that is what you're aspiring towards, then knowing this jargon is very important. If it's not what you're aspiring towards, knowing what this jargon actually means is still important for your business. So let's go ahead and define these terms right now. First, we've got minimum viable products. This is a version of a product or service that has enough features to satisfy the baseline identified wants and needs of early customers. So, customers will use the product or the service and then they'll offer feedback for the MVP for it towards its development. So whatever the thing is, whether it's a product, whether it's a service, or in a nonprofit grassroots context, whether it's a program, the thing, this MVP is what allows for a business or a nonprofit to test if its business model or mission is still something that's worth pursuing. So oftentimes people will use interchangeably with the acronym MVP, they'll use the word prototype. And so an MVP is just a prototype. They mean the same exact thing. So what is a pivot? So like I just explained, with a minimum viable product, you are seeking feedback from a customer base. Sometimes feedback is going to be overwhelmingly in one direction, and maybe it's perceived as negative. Or it's just something that's telling you that you need to make major adjustments if you want to actually serve the want or the need that you identified in that customer base through your solution. So once you've gotten that feedback, then it's up to you to determine if you have the resources required to actually successfully execute a pivot. Sometimes you won't have those types of resources. Again, we're not talking about the high growth uh, Silicon Valley situation where there's money kind of floating everywhere. Sometimes the resources don't exist, and the feedback that you're getting is telling you that, okay, it may not make sense to go into business. At that point, what you're pivoting towards is maybe something completely different, or maybe you're pivoting towards a pause to assess what you actually need to continue to develop the product into something that can be taken to more customers. So that gets us to our last term, iteration. If you have determined that you do have the right amount of resources to enact um, the feedback, the feedback that you've gotten from a prototype or an MVP, then you are ready to pivot into a new iteration of the product itself. So there can be multiple iterations of a product or service before it goes to market. And what it means to go to market is just it means that you're officially selling your product or service to anybody, regardless of who your target customer base is. All right. Now that we've gotten that out of the way, we can finally get into an example. So this is where everybody who's watching this, jot this down. This is the slide where you identify the tool that houses the Lean Canvas within the Kansas City Public Library digital catalog. And if you happen to be watching this and you're part of a different library system like Mid-Continent or Johnson County, I believe Johnson County has it as well. I know for a fact Mid-Continent has the Gale Business Plan Builder as well. So this is a tool that's quite popular amongst different library systems. Um, so you will access this through the digital catalog. There's a link to the catalog entry right here. And what I'm going to do right now is share a different screen. Okay. And to make sure that the right screen was showing. All right, so what you're seeing is the page for Gale Business Plan Builder. Just to let you know how to access it, um, you will access this through the Kansas City Public Library homepage. You'll go to Learn, and when you click on Learn, a drop down comes up. The last piece of the drop down is the digital list. You'll click on that, and then you'll go to G for Gale Business Plan Builder. And this is the blurb about Gale Business Plan Builder in the digital catalog. You'll click on Access Now. And once you do that for the first time, if you're inside the library, it will take you directly to the plan builder. If you're outside of the library, you will first have to enter your library card number that ends in 1000, I believe, or I believe it starts with 1000. Um, you'll enter your library card number and 4-digit PIN code, and then you'll click on Get Started, which will prompt you to create an account because this is the type of tool that you are going to return to over time. All right, so that is how to access the plan builder. We're going to go to another tab here. I'm going to make sure that you can see my screen because I know that things get finicky. All right, so now we are inside the tool itself. Let me back up a little bit so that you understand how I got here. Um, go to the dashboard. When you log in, and after you have set the name of your company, you'll see a dashboard that looks like this, and you are going to determine whether or not your incorporation type is a for-profit business or a nonprofit. In this example, we're using a for-profit business, but just know that there is also um, corresponding content for the nonprofit world as well. So if you look over onto the left-hand side here, you will see 5 modules, starting with entrepreneur profile, ending with financial projections. What we're focused on today is business ideation. We'll click the down arrow here to then access a link called the Lean Canvas. All right. So when you are using Gale Business Plan Builder, it holds your hand. So it helps you understand what you're doing. If this presentation is not helpful for you, and you need some more information about what is the Lean Canvas, definitely feel free to browse through these questions up here in the light blue rectangle. First question, what is this? Just a brief description of what the Lean Canvas is. How does it work? Why should you do it? And where do you start? So what you'll notice with this version of the Lean Canvas is that it is numbered. This is not the case with the example that I have in the slides, but it is the case here. So you're not going to have, you don't have to memorize the order of operations. You just need to follow the numbers. So the example that we're going through today is a small business in the form of a coffee shop in an urban setting. So let's just go through and read through what each section is talking about here. So the first question, or the first section, problem. There is no coffee shop downtown right now. It's a small town, and while there is a Starbucks on the outskirts of town, there's nothing currently serving the center of the community. So let's think about this from the customer's vantage point. I am a coffee drinker, but I don't really want to go to Starbucks, which is the only one in the town that I live in or the area that I live in. I'm I'm not a fan of their pricing. I'm not a fan of their practices. So I'm not really keen on going to Starbucks. So I'm just somebody that drinks coffee at home. But it would be nice to go to a coffee shop, huh? So what is the problem? There is no coffee shop downtown right now. I would like to visit a coffee shop downtown. And again, it's a small town. There is a coffee shop called Starbucks that's all the way on the other side. And if I want to go get coffee really bad, then I will, maybe. But to be honest, I probably won't because it's not downtown and it's also Starbucks. I wish that there was something at the center of community where I could get my caffeine fix. So that's the problem. Next, we've got customer segments. There is a lot of pedestrian traffic in the downtown area between commercial and government buildings. The traffic is predominantly working age adults. There is more foot traffic during the summer than the winter. So, in this example, the entrepreneur has observed that there are a lot of people that are out and about in the downtown area due to either working or visiting the government buildings and the commercial buildings that are in the area. Since there's a lot of traffic, maybe those could be customers to a central coffee shop that serves a lot of the community. What the entrepreneur also noticed is that there is more foot traffic during the summer than the winter, which checks out because a lot of people like to be out when the weather is warmer. But knowing that this is a coffee shop, potentially people might be enticed to visit a coffee shop in the winter if it existed. Just things to think through. Uh, what the entrepreneur also noticed is that the traffic is predominantly working age adults. So we are talking about a segment of customers who are working age and who work downtown, either in the commercial or the government buildings. Um, we also know that this can be potentially a seasonal business given that there is less foot traffic in the winter than the summer. So there's a lot of things that can spin around with that. With a coffee shop, you can have warm coffee, you can have cold coffee. If you are established in the winter time, then you can position yourself as, a spot where you can warm up on your way to work or um, just meet with people where you don't have to necessarily hustle and bustle to get from point A to point B, if that's the type of situation that you have. So there's just a lot of ways to start to think through the observation um, that is articulated in this particular customer segment. So let's think through this. There actually might be multiple customer segments that can be, I guess, taken from this little paragraph here. First, we might be able to segment our customers hmm, based off of if they're a government worker or somebody who works in the commercial building. There might be a difference. Um, maybe we can segment customers based off of how things are in the summer versus how things are in the winter. So there's just different ways to start to think about different segments and how to kind of group them. Because being able to, one, identify your target customer, that's your main thing, is to be able to identify your target customer. Um, but being able to identify different segments is also going to help inform any marketing strategy that you decide to um, deploy over time. So, with any marketing strategy, you're definitely going to be it's going to help you a lot to be very clear about who the target customer is. And maybe that target customer is going to change over time or based off of based off of uh, the different seasons in the year. So just keep that in mind. Your target customer could change, but you want to be able to articulate who that target customer is and why you're serving them and why you're best positioned to serve them. Because everybody else is going to be secondary. They're not going to take the majority of your marketing or sales resources. They may be attracted to your product or service, but they're not going to be your priority as far as who you're trying to actually appeal to necessarily. But then again, maybe, maybe you identify your target customer base and you don't have to do that much marketing because the product kind of sells itself. Again, coffee is something that a lot of people drink. And coffee shops are not necessarily a unique niche type thing. They can become a niche if you want to, um, but there might there might be the case that your target customer is not necessarily a group that you have to spend that much money or resources on marketing to because uh, they already identify with your product, and that could be through the branding, that could be through the product itself, that could be through any number of things. So just this is all to kind of hopefully illustrate that when you're thinking through this, keep an open mind. So just because you have an assumption doesn't mean that that assumption is going to play out. So as you are articulating what you think is going on with each of these different sections, keep an open mind and maybe start to think of like, oh, well, what if it was this way? Because that can that can just help you as far as um, figuring out what to do if you need to pivot, if you've determined that you have the resources to do that. All right. So enough of customer segments. Let's go to number three, unique value propositions. So when I'm working with people one on one, the way that I like to frame unique value proposition is by saying something to the effect of uh, the unique value proposition is the change that a customer or a beneficiary, anybody that's engaging with a product, service, or program, it's the change in the quality of life that somebody has gotten from your product or from the coffee shop here. So before, up to the point that somebody hears about the business name, then goes ahead and purchases something, a product or a service from that business, to after they have completed using the product or they have completed the engagement with the service, what has actually changed in that person's life? So I like to frame it this way because I feel that this is a way to more holistically look at what is value. Value is not just what we call a return on investment in a monetary sense. It is it's your life basically. How did this affect your life? What is the change? So in this particular example, the entrepreneur said, I can price approximately the same as Starbucks. My shop will offer convenience because they can walk to it easily from their place of business. I plan to name my drinks after local landmarks for emotional appeal and uniqueness. So, once we've gotten to number three here, we see that the entrepreneur has identified a target segment, and that is people who are working in the commercial business. Uh, or I could be reading a little bit too much into that. But when they say people, people will find value in this due to the ability to walk to the coffee shop from their place of business. That is the interpretation that I have, is that they're focused on uh, people that are in the commercial businesses, whether they own those businesses or are workers in those business. Um, so the first thing that the entrepreneur is thinking about is the price point, and they are saying, I'm going to base my pricing off of Starbucks pricing because that's what people, if they go to a coffee shop in this town, they are used to the prices of Starbucks. So it doesn't necessarily make sense for me to go much above or below Starbucks prices. The entrepreneur has a lot of faith um, in the location. And I think that's a smart thing to think of. Because the shop is located downtown or will be located downtown, the shop is already offering convenience. So people will easily identify it and just think, oh, I can just walk there. So let me go and try it. Let me go and get my coffee. And then they can become loyal customers over time. Um, I love the last bit here where the entrepreneur says, I plan to name my drinks after local landmarks for emotional appeal and uniqueness, because this is where the entrepreneur is really starting to think, how am I competing with Starbucks? Starbucks is a national chain or an international chain. Um, how do I make my coffee shop stand out? I'm going to really lean in to the fact that I'm local and I know what's going on locally. So I'm going to name the drinks after the local landmarks so that people can identify with uh with the coffee shop itself and feel like it is actually catering to them. Um, so that's where the emotional appeal and the uniqueness comes in. Okay, now we're ready to talk through solutions. So you see how we've articulated the problem, we articulated a customer segment, and we've articulated the value to that customer segment. Now it's time to articulate what the actual solution is. So the entrepreneur says, I'm going to bring a locally themed coffee shop to the center of my downtown. I will also specialize in iced drinks as foot traffic is very high during the summer months near my intended location. So, when you see this example here, please make note of the fact that the solution has incorporated aspects of the previous three sections of the canvas, which shows you that the lean canvas itself is iterative. You are building in your thinking. You're building in your thinking based off of what you have already articulated in the previous sections of the lean canvas. So as you move forward and forward with the lean canvas, it should become easier and easier to articulate the different aspects of the business itself if you are working towards something that is viable. Okay. So you'll notice here with solutions, she's talking about it being locally themed. So in unique value proposition, the business owner said, I plan to name my drinks. Then in solutions, the business owner said, I'm going to bring a locally themed coffee shop to the center of my downtown. So you see how the firmness is starting to grow. And then I will also specialize in iced drinks. This is starting to talk about what is the difference between foot traffic in the summer versus the winter. So this is starting to maybe get towards when will this entrepreneur try to open? Maybe they'll think about opening in the winter time so that they can develop some loyalty. So when the summertime comes, those customers that have been getting the hot drinks are now bought in and they're getting the ice drinks. And then maybe other people are starting to get the ice drinks and more and more. It's something to just keep thinking through, experimenting as you go. All right, let's get to channels. In channels, the entrepreneur says, storefront is a big deal as I will have an ideal location with a lot of foot traffic. I also need to attend community events to advertise as my business is locally themed and driven on community feeling. So here the entrepreneur has identified two channels. These are not going to be the end all be all, hopefully. There's going to be all kinds of other channels, but these are the two key channels that the entrepreneur has identified as the most important. And you'll notice that there's nothing digital mentioned here. I assume that there will be maybe a website, maybe a Facebook page that that corresponds with this coffee shop because that's just kind of the name of the game if you want to have an online presence. But this entrepreneur has identified that in person, in real life, are the most important channels. So the first channel is the storefront itself. So that is the building itself. And the fact that it is downtown. So the first channel is foot traffic from downtown. Then the second channel is um, presence in community spaces and community events. Because the business is locally themed, it's going to be paramount, very, very important that the business owner um, establishes a presence within the community so that community organizations are aware and can support and also validate um, the authenticity of the thematic scheme for this business. All right, so now we're going to revenue. The entrepreneur says, I expect that it will take about 1.5 months to set up my business and get it going. After that, I will grow based upon my own marketing and word of mouth. I will keep my first product openings fairly simple and then offer a special drink of the month to keep people interested in coming back. So, this is where the entrepreneur is really thinking through, when am I going to start actually earning income? So, the first sentence is not directly talking about revenue streams, but it is talking about um, the expectation in time that the entrepreneur anticipates for getting the business off the ground. Um, then the entrepreneur is talking about growth based off of their own marketing strategy. And they separate word of mouth with marketing, but word of mouth is part of the marketing here. So, then last but not least, the last sentence is saying that they're going to keep their product openings simple, and offer a special drink of the month to keep people coming back. So there's no numbers listed here. This is all just initial thought. Um, the entrepreneur expects that revenue will start to grow once the business is off the ground because of the marketing that um, the entrepreneur is going to engage in. Whether that marketing strategy is known at this point is unclear. But the idea is that by the time the business is actually open, that entrepreneur is going to have a marketing strategy more or less ready to go. Um, this entrepreneur is also being cognizant of their own resources in time and money, and they're saying they're going to keep their product offering very simple because they're banking on the fact that they're the only locally themed coffee shop downtown. Um, and so they don't necessarily need to offer the world. They just need to offer a solid offering of coffee and then have something fun every month so that people can see, oh, yeah, they've got different things going on, and I would like to try different products as the business grows. So now we'll move to cost structure, and we see one number, 20,000. So this entrepreneur has thought more about cost than they've thought about revenue here, which goes against what I was saying earlier, where a lot of people tend to think more of like, what are the numbers that I can bring in before they think of the cost? So great example here. So what the entrepreneur is saying is they plan to start with cost plus pricing. What is cost plus pricing? Very quickly, cost plus pricing is a pricing strategy that first um, takes the cost of a product and then adds a percentage amount, whatever profit target the entrepreneur has deemed um, attainable, is added to that cost, and then that becomes the sticker price. So they plan to start with cost plus pricing and then adjust as they see which drinks are more popular than others. They know that there are some startup costs with opening a food servicing business, and they expect that they will have to start their business with a startup cost of $20,000. So let's look at the cost structure then with the revenue streams. So if they estimate that they're going to need $20,000, that $20,000 is what is going to be spent over those 1.5 months to get the business off the ground. And then the marketing strategy is going to determine the revenue. Now we're getting to the last two bits, and we're going to talk a little bit about key metrics. So, for this entrepreneur, customer loyalty is the biggest metric that they need to push for. So it's really, really great to know this up front because this is what is going to be built into the marketing strategy with their identified target customer base. Um, since the business is competing with Starbucks, the entrepreneur says that they need to emphasize community and that feeling where everybody knows your name. So as you can see here again, the iteration is growing. The ideation is building on itself. And by this eighth section in the Lean Canvas, the entrepreneur has identified a key strategy that they need to take for to base to best position their business in a space where they're competing head on with a national, international retailer like Starbucks. All right. Last and not least is the unfair advantage. And hopefully by now you can start to guess what is going to be the unfair advantage of this particular coffee shop in this town. All right, so the entrepreneur says, there is no other coffee shop in the downtown area. Starbucks is 2 miles outside of town near the highway, and people cannot walk there. I also plan to have a locally themed coffee shop instead of the store brand, which has significant appeal in the town. So, this is again at a very specific point in time where there is no other coffee shop. So, what this entrepreneur has as an advantage right now is basically first mover advantage in that they will be the first coffee shop in the downtown area. So, by that alone, they are at an advantage. Them establishing a presence downtown could inspire other people to open up similar coffee shops in the downtown area or in nearby areas, but they will not have the first mover advantage. So, this entrepreneur has really landed on something very important here, which is that they have identified that this market is not saturated and they will be the first person to establish a presence in the downtown coffee shop market. Um, so they know that they'll probably not compete directly with Starbucks because they're going to be focused on the foot traffic downtown. And in order to keep customers, they will be locally themed so that people feel comfortable engaging with their coffee shop, maybe beyond just drinking coffee. So hopefully you can see through this example how the lean canvas builds on itself and how it helps to really clarify an initial idea that you may have for a business. Um, when I work with people using the lean canvas, I often call it the pre-business plan or the business plan before the business plan. Um, and again, what it does is it really helps you articulate your idea and then determine if it makes sense to continue to move forward, to continue to invest time in developing the idea. So, as you can see with this example is something that should be pursued because the entrepreneur has already identified the amount of resources that they need, the 20,000 to get off the ground. And each section of the canvas has built on itself from the previous section. So, based off of just articulation, the logic is there. This is something that is worth spending more time developing. All right, we're going to go back to the PowerPoint because we are done looking at the example. Again, the tool that we're looking at here is called the Gale Business Plan Builder, excuse me. And it helps you bring your ideas to life. I just want to note that it also includes a break-even analysis, uh, templates for business plans, and then a way to do financial projections if you're at that phase. Okay, so stopping share, and I'm going to reshare to get back into our presentation. So we were just on the example. I'm going to briefly talk about another version of the Lean Canvas that you can access through Gale Business Plan Builder, and it's called the Mission Model Canvas. This is for nonprofits and grassroots initiatives. So there are a couple or three key differences between the Lean Canvas and the Mission Model Canvas. When you're focused on a mission-driven initiative or a nonprofit that is serving a particular population with a program, this is the clarifying tool that you will maybe want to use. It helps to articulate a mission. So the key differences here are um, you'll notice you're going in the same order, but you'll notice that instead of customer segments, you have audience. And with this, you are not thinking solely about the target beneficiary group that you're trying to serve through the mission driven initiative. But you're also thinking about potential supporters. So that's anyone who hears about the work that is being done. So again, just like customer segments, you're going to identify your target audience. And with a mission driven initiative, this may be more straightforward than with a for profit initiative because typically, when you were talking about a grassroots, a mission driven initiative, you already know who um, the target audience is, and it's probably your community that is dealing with some kind of issue. Then the next key difference is solution becomes competition. And what is exactly is competition when we're talking about the nonprofit context? Well, all we mean here, all I mean, all the Canvas means is you are basically operating in a space with limited funding as far as grant dollars, if that is something that you end up pursuing. So you need to be very aware of the other organizations that could be vying for the same type of funding that you could be applying for. Um, if it's not grant funding that you're looking for, it's community support and donations. And again, the other organizations that may be working in the space that you're working are also going to be working with similar community members. And um, maybe you need to identify a subgroup um, that is not being served by existing organizations so that um, efforts aren't necessarily duplicated. Okay, then the last key difference here um is channels becomes outreach. So it's still pretty much the same way to think about channels with the for-profit version. Um, but you are thinking about this in terms of outreach, in terms of who you are going to make, who are the groups and the individuals you're going to make contact with through your mission. And it could be those groups that amplify the work that you do. It could be groups that help you find resources. Um, the sky's kind of the limit there. I forgot to name two other differences, but I don't think they're necessarily key differences. They're thought of similarly as the revenue and costs, and that is mission achievement and mission budget. So when you are thinking through your idea for a nonprofit or mission-led initiative, you are thinking about things in terms of how you are actually achieving that mission. So, based off of the resources that you're using, that mission budget, how are you actually achieving the mission that you have set forth? What are going to be the metrics that go into determining whether you're close to achieving your mission or whether you're off the mark? I should also mention here that where in the for-profit version of the Lean Canvas, it says key metrics, we have key resources. So instead of just articulating out the metrics, which should just be baked into each section of the mission model canvas, uh, you're going to be articulating that through the mission achievement, and then you're going to be thinking about what are the key resources that you need to actually carry out the mission, whether you have those resources or not. And um, a lot of those resources may come through partners. Okay. So I don't want to spend too much time with that because we're focused more on the for-profit version. Um, and we are getting to the end of our time here. So we're on our last slide. Um, Here I've compiled some additional resources, including a link to the Gale Business Plan Builder. Um, that can provide some more background on the lean canvas and the lean methodology itself. The first is an article by an individual named Lomit Patel, where he is basically articulating, in other words, the startup methodology that has already been explained by Eric Ries, who came up with the methodology to begin with. Then the next resource that I have linked here is called Canvanizer, and this is just another version of the Lean Canvas that you can use, and it's free and you can download it. Then we've got a video here listed, and this is a video from Eric Ries himself, and it's just talking about 5 lean startup principles. And this, whether you are in the high growth area or you're more of a small business, this video may be useful just as far as boiling down what are the key principles that you need to be thinking of if you want to work in a lean manner to develop your business idea. All right. That is the end of our time for today. I'm going to very quickly um, go back to the beginning of the slides here, just so that you can see my contacts. Oops, if it will let me. Right. So I'm just leaving this up on the screen for a little bit so that if you weren't able to jot down my email address and jot down the link to schedule a meeting, you can do that now. Um, Please feel free to shoot me an email and feel free to set up a meeting with me if you've got a business idea or an existing business that you would like to have some one-on-one assistance with. All right. Thank you so much for your time. This was clarifying a business idea using the Lean Canvas, and my name is Hadiza.